fashion, things to wear, possibly faces covered, but more importantly, covering up the bodies. Merch. We have that now. We are very, very excited to announce that Vampire and the Devil have partnered with our friends at Rock and Horror Apparel. They are now taking care of the actual merch, the exclusive merch for the Vampire and Devil podcast, modeled by our very sexy devil right here.
Oh, yeah.
But we have all kinds of goodies to share with you.
Got the hoodies. We got some shirts. We got some tanks coming up. We got some booty shorts. We got all the stuff you want to wear from the Vampire and Devil podcast, thanks to Rock and Horror.
Horns up. Fangs out. Our Fangs and Infernos, we are super stoked to be coming back at you guys with another awesome conversation based off one of myself and Devil's adventures in Conland. As you see, Devil is putting on his human face for this particular experience, but we are really, really excited to have a little follow-up, based off the incredibly amazing experience that myself and Devil had at the Maryland Pop and Horror Con. So we really, really appreciate all of their courtesies, of which allowed us to make this happen. And so we are so happy to welcome Fedor Stier on the show right now. Fedor, thank you so much. It was an honor getting to meet you. Such great conversations hanging with you, and welcome to the Vampire and Devil podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This is quite special. It was awesome talking to you guys there in Baltimore. We had a great time, and it was great to connect again and talk some more.
Absolutely, 100%, my friend. And of course, first and foremost, with everything that's kind of going on right now, and also one of the themes of Maryland Pop and Horror for that particular weekend was having, cast members from Scary Movie, of which you got to participate in. Of course, you get to add to fandoms like myself, who are Art the Clown people, but you got to play Artie Claus in Scary Movie 6. And with that movie, being out, being well received, and, people just excited that the Wayans brothers, got to get back into the Scary Movie world and put a brand new movie out for myself and Devil to enjoy, because we went to celebrate his birthday. We went and saw Scary Movie 6.
Nice.
It was a great time. We really enjoyed it. And not only how have you watched, the reception of the movie, of this, movie that you got to be a part of, but also just how did the opportunity present itself?
Well, I'll go in chronological order. I was at another convention, and Bob Kurtzman and Marcy King, his partner, were there at that convention with me, and I knew them. We'd worked together on Dr. Sleep, Haunting of Hill House, Kevin Smith product called Kilroy was here, and we've become good friends, and so we got to hang out at Knoxville convention there. They asked me then, hey, are you available? We have a project coming up, and the deadline is super tight. I mean, we need somebody like right now. And here you are. You'd be perfect for this. And do you want to do it? I said, absolutely. And that was a Scary Movie. So originally there were two parts that they were thinking about. One was Artie Claus, the Art the Clown parody. And the other was from the Barbarian movie. The naked lady with the very large breasts. They were going to have me play that one as well.
Oh, wow.
Which would have been awesome. I would have loved to have done that one. But they ended up cutting that one from the movie. And in fact, for a while, because they initially brought this up and they said, yeah, it's a go. And then it got dropped. And like weeks went by and I was like, hey, is this still happening? It's still happening. No, your scene got cut from the movie. I was like, dang.
Yeah,
I was really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I remember them talking about that one of the movies that they were going to make fun of was Barbarians, and I remember it being out there. But that's kind of crazy that would have been great. I think that scene would have been awesome. It was, it's just as cool as the Artie Claus, which is just a part of that movie is just so funny because not only is it like Felissa Rose and stuff in there, but you got Michael Levy, who's part of that Terrifier, world and stuff like that. So it's so funny that, and plus that. Just that, even just like in the trailer where the little girl grabs the nuts and goes, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
I mean, I just love that whole scene. It was just so great.
Yeah. Well, they were going to cut that out too, and then a few weeks later, I texted Marcy. He's like, "What's going on?" And he said, "Yeah, they cut it." And then a couple weeks later, she texted back and said they decided to put that back in. I said, "Yay!" And then we had a couple of weeks. Now it works out because I've been doing this creature work for quite a while, so a lot of the shops have my head already in their shop. We've done a life cast of it, so they have my
Yeah.
head, and that helps because then they can build the prosthetics right on that head. And it saves them a huge amount of time because they don't have to fly in an actor, create a head cast, create the molds, and all the stuff that comes with it. So they already have one there. It saves them weeks of time. Boom, they can prepare it and get ready for the movie. So, and I was already in Atlanta, which was another plus. That's where we filmed it. So I was able to go in and film that. We did it all in a day at an actual mall. We went to a real mall, and there were actually people walking by upstairs, and in the background there were real shoppers going by. Where I stood, they didn't show it in the movie, but I actually made an entrance, just like in the real Terrifier 3. That I made an entrance onto the little Santa Claus throne there. And but I was standing behind the wall waiting for my cue, and right in front of me is a door to some restaurant's kitchen, and there was kitchen staff behind that door in the glass going, watching me, standing there waiting for my cue to go out there and be Artie Claus. That was a big. I got a big kick out of that. Yeah.
That would have been me. I've been in the restaurant business forever, and just being a Terrifier fan, I would have just been watching there, being like, "Oh, this is so cool."
Oh yeah, there were a few cameras out. I'm surprised that that it didn't make the social media rounds, or maybe they did, and then people didn't pick up on it. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
and I was
And
absolutely thrilled to be a part of this what would you call it? I guess franchise. I mean, David Howard Thornton and the whole Art the Clown thing has become such a huge
yeah,
phenomenon. You know, really, really huge. And to kind of like jump on there and kind of ride that bandwagon, kind of ride on David's coattails. It's a thrill for me. And David has been gracious. Reached out to me and congratulated me, and he said he loved it, and you know, he wished he could have been there, but you know, he had other commitments. So he's been very gracious about that, and it's I'm very thankful that it's all gone so well.
oh, that's super duper cool. And
So,
this
yeah.
question just kind
We're
of
gonna
like
have a
hit my
fan film.
what's up, Devil?
I was like saying, I was like, are we gonna have a fan film? You know, Artie Claus versus Art the Clown
I
movie.
suggested it to Michael Levy. He said we should have a like Art versus Artie film or something. Because it would have been fun, you know, because we're making a parody of Terrifier 3. Terrifier 3 should make a parody of Scary Movie 6.
That'd be funny.
Oh,
That would be
so
funny.
cool. For sure.
Terrifier 4, right? Terrifier
Well, yeah.
4 would,
Oh yeah, Terrifier 4, right.
yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that kind of like hit my brain that I just find interesting when you were talking about, doing the Knoxville Con, and then of course when we got to meet you at Maryland Pop and Horror, if because you would, making appearances, and with the merchandise you would have available for fans, you might know this. Had your scenes had if you're in a movie and your scenes end up getting cut, would you be able to have 8x10s, for example, like on your table and stuff for like fans to choose from? Or if a scene kind of like loses, I can imagine that footage maybe being tricky to even get when it comes to photos. But has something like that, do you know if that would be possible to be a thing, or have you ever had a situation like that where it's like, man, I did this cool shot of this movie that I'd love to make available, but I don't know if I can get them.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's ever come back to me from the production studios and said, "Hey, you can't use that picture" or whatever like that. I don't think anybody cares that much because in the end, it's all publicity for the film, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There is one picture I use for Haunting of Hill House, for example. It's not from the show. And the reason is that the pictures I have from the show, they're all so dark, because I play this ghost in a very dark haunted mansion.
Mhm.
And every picture any screen shot I tried to grab, they end up being very dark. What do you have on there? Did you show it?
Oh, not your photo, but I just pulled up Haunting of Hill
Oh yeah,
House.
Haunting of Hill House. Yeah. And so those, when I try to make them a little bit brighter and turn them into an 8x10 for people to sign. They're just really dark and grainy, so they don't work very well. So the one I use the most for Hill House is actually a continuity photo that Bob Kurtzman took. After he applied all my makeup, he said, "Let me take a picture," and on his phone, and he sent that to me later, and that's the one I use for my 8x10s for Hill House. For Scary Movie, I've got one where I'm there with a chainsaw. I look
Yeah.
awesome. I love that picture. But that scene, that part that we filmed got cut from the movie as well. It was in the
Oh,
trailer, but it got cut from the movie.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because I did notice that on your table. Not totally. And Fedor, one of the things that we saw on your table that we thought was really cool is you have that really cool photo of yourself with Mike and Felissa. And Devil and I were even looking at that photo, be like, dude, that thing would be really cool. We should maybe try to get them signed. And I'm like, bro, I'm losing money on Felissa Rose because she's been very, very good to me and Devil. And we're very, very grateful that we can, we can call her a friend now. And the fun thing about that is I was like, because I know how I am with things and certain things that are just kind of like cool. So of course, when
Yeah.
Devil and I met her the first time, Sleepaway Camp was the way. I was like, gotta get her. It's Angela. I was like, gotta get her on Sleepaway Camp. And then morphed into some other things like my Terrifier 2 poster. But we had this cool experience where Devil and I got the opportunity to interview Goldberg and the producers and the main star of The Forest Hills, which was Shelley Duvall's final movie. So that was a really, really cool opportunity for us. And the DVD that I got from them, it turned into a fun little pet project as well. It's kind of like this like little tribute to Shelley. So like
Oh,
they
yeah.
signed it when we did the interview, and then I would chase kind of people around for it. So I got Edward Furlong on there from like Terminator 2 and D
Wow.
D Wallace from like Critters and E.T. And then of course I added Felissa on there too. And it's funny because I remember pointing this out to Devil recently, and it's nothing that I said because like I'm a very when guests are signing memorabilia, Devil and I are very low maintenance. We're like, hey, dealer's choice, whatever color you like, whatever area you like. The only times I ever might steer a person into a signing area is if maybe an area is getting close, like cluttered, and it's messing with my OCD.
Got
When my
to keep it
Terrifier
balanced, right? You got to keep it balanced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like when my Terrifier 3 poster originally was getting a few signatures on it, when it was on the wall in the apartment in my old apartment above my computer, the first few people that signed, like John Abrams, for example, who I got the poster from, who was at Maryland Pop with you, um, they were all signing it down the left-hand side. I don't know why. It was nothing I said. It was just the way they were doing
This
things.
started
And
happening. Yeah.
and I was looking and I would be looking at this thing while recording episodes and it would just be killing my OCD. And so when we met Jason Patrick from the Lost Boys, because Mrs. Vamp, my wife, is big into Sienna. If you're familiar with the Terrifier franchise, she really is invested in Sienna's
Okay.
character and her story. So we were like, well, we got to get Jason Patrick on this thing because we got to have Sienna's dad on there. So that was the only person I casually steered to the right because he was like, well, where would you like me to sign? I'm like, hey, wherever you're comfortable. But just so you know, everybody seems to be owning this left-hand side. So you have all this space to own if you want. And he's like, you know what? I'm gonna own it. And sure enough, he autographed the right-hand side. And I was like, yes, balance out a little bit for my own
Perfect.
OCD.
Yeah.
But anyway, the reason I bring that up is just kind of this cool little Shelley Duvall story for me and Devil as fans. Just because I noticed recently when Edward was the last person to sign it, everybody has literally silhouetted Shelley's face.
Oh,
Nobody has signed like over her. The cover of the DVD is pretty full, but nobody has signed over her face. They've all kind of done it in a way where there's this kind of silhouette like halo around her. And I'm like, you know what? That's actually just kind of a cool little thing.
that's pretty cool. That's very
Absolutely.
cool. Yeah.
Devil, my friend, it's all you, my guy.
I was gonna say, as we're talking about Shelley Duvall and stuff like that, talk about, obviously you worked with, Mike Flanagan with, in the line. Talk about also working with, on Doctor Sleep with him because to me, I think Doctor Sleep was just such a great continuation of the Shining story. And I love the fact that, like I said, I'm a huge Stephen King fan. We just did an episode about Stanley Kubrick, and I will die on the hill. I was like, I love Stephen King, but there's two things Stephen King is wrong about. Maximum Overdrive is an amazing movie. I know he was on cocaine. He doesn't like it, but
Awesome.
it's still an amazing movie. And Stanley Kubrick's version of The Shining is way superior than the TV version. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the TV version, but I love the fact that Doctor Sleep continued the Kubrick version of The Shining.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
talk about working with that and working with such amazing actors on that movie.
Yeah, that was really cool experience. I mean, for me, it was a cameo. Mike Flanagan had worked with me on Haunting of Hill House, or I'd worked with him really to be accurate. Um,
Yeah.
and he did Doctor Sleep pretty much right after, and I got the call say, "Hey, can you come and do a cameo on Doctor Sleep?" And I said, "Absolutely, yes." And I got to say, it was a very much a surreal experience because to prepare for Doctor Sleep, really all I did was watch The Shining again, and it had been decades since I watched it. So I watched The Shining, and a couple days later, I go to Atlanta and I walk into the onto the sound stage, onto the set, and I got goosebumps on my arms because they had recreated that Overlook Hotel
Oh, nice.
exactly like it was in The Shining. It was so weird. I mean, the typewriter was there, the papers with the whole all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. That all that typing
Yeah.
it was there. The elevator was there. In fact, I still have the elevator. I took a picture of the elevator and it's still my background on my phone
Wow.
this
Oh,
day.
nice.
And everything was perfectly recreated. Apparently, they had gone through all the old blueprints, looked carefully at all the pictures, and matched it beautifully. And Mike came over, gave me a big hug, and he says, "So good to see you." I said, "You got to check this set out. You got to check this out." On the second floor, there's a grown-up sized tricycle. Go ahead and ride it. Go ahead and ride it around the
Wow.
around the Overlook Hotel. So somewhere there's video footage of me on this grown-up sized tricycle riding through the hallways of the Overlook Hotel. And you know how
Oh,
it's
nice.
raining? It's what's the eeriest part about it is the sound because the little boy Danny goes from the hardwood floor to the carpet to the hardwood floor to the
The
carpet,
carpet, yeah.
and it's just that sound, no music or anything. It was exactly like that as I'm riding this tricycle around the hallways. And then, of course, I stop at the room and look up, just like Danny did. And it was such a thrill, just such a thrill to be there and be a part of that, So now I got my little moment in Doctor Sleep and got to meet Ewan McGregor and Rebecca Ferguson, who were incredible people. I got to play billiards with Ewan McGregor after we finished. They had, the billiard table from the
Oh,
Overlook
nice.
Hotel was there. It was real, and uh, Ewan McGregor and I had a couple of games afterwards, just chatting about home, growing up. Where did you play billiards? And he was good. He kicked my ass. But and I got a blurry picture of him at the pool table somewhere, and that alone made it worth it. They didn't have to pay me, just that moment alone, just to spend some time with him and shoot the shit while we're playing pool. That was incredible.
Yeah, we had a hotel with or one of our cons that was in Baltimore. That's also in New Jersey, Monster Mania. They had a hotel in the Hunt Valley, and their carpet looked exactly like The Shining in the carpet. And I always
Yeah.
wanted to like get a tricycle and just ride around there all the time. It was
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, I mean, just even talking about that, when you're saying that, it's exactly like when you watch that movie, when you get to the Outlook Hotel, like everything looks like to the T exactly. I was like, I was so impressed with their, when they did that. Even like the bartender and everybody basically almost looking exactly how like the original guys all looked. It was crazy. Like it was insane. Like how well Mike and the people who the set designers and all that stuff like that made that look. Because I could imagine like as an actor or someone walking into that and being like, holy shit, this is crazy.
It was crazy. It was really wild. It was really wild to see that. Yeah. Yeah. Henry Thomas played the bartender and he nailed it.
Yeah.
You know, he absolutely nailed it, just looking
So
like
good.
Jack. And he approached I in Knoxville, Henry Thomas was there and we got to have dinner together and he told me the story about that. He said he approached Mike Flanagan and said, "Hey, I want to do Jack." And Mike was like, "You don't look like Jack." He said, "Oh yeah, yeah, I can do it. You know, so you're gonna have to shave your head." He said, "Yeah, yeah." So he convinced Mike Flanagan he could do it. He did. He pulled it off. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always been a huge fan of his. I'm a huge fan of Henry Thomas. I'm an ET kid, so you know what I mean. I grew up watching him.
Yeah, we all did. We
Um,
all did. So it was so
yeah,
cool to talk to him and get all the stories about how he got the role and being there and he was so generous with us stories because I'm sure he's told these stories a million times, but he told it one more time for me. So I loved it. I loved it.
speaking of stories, I read on the internet, and not everything you read on the internet is real. You never really know. But I heard a story that before you started your career or going into your career, that you ran into Joseph Gordon-Levitt's on a vacation and his family and got inspired to do what you're doing. And my girlfriend, the reason why I bring it up is because my girlfriend calls Joseph my man crush. I'm like a huge fan of his. I've been a fan of his ever since like Third Rock from the Sun and every movie he
Right.
does.
Yeah.
So I talk about it so much. He's like, my girlfriend's like, dude, that's your man crush. So is that true? And talk a little bit about that experience,
Yeah, that's
if it was true.
absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So I
nice.
was actually working on the cruise ship. I was an officer on the cruise ship, and Joe and his family showed up, and when you're on a cruise ship, you have the captain's table. I was a chief officer, so I had my table, and the passengers would sit with me at dinner time, and Joe and his family they sat at my table, and I think almost every night that they were on the cruise for a week, and told stories about life in Hollywood, a life on set, and I was absolutely fascinated by this. I really was soaking this all in. I said, this sounds like so much fun, so interesting. And Joe's mom was telling me about the people that work on set, that they're intelligent, hardworking, interesting people, which is true. And I found that to be true. Uh, I thought, wow, how do you get into that? And he said, well, you just do it. It doesn't, you don't have to be a superhuman to become an actor. They look for all kinds of people. And when people ask me about, how do you become an actor? I tell them the same thing now. There's every type of person in movies, and then I think this is a misconception that everybody has to be the glamorous Hollywood, um, 10 out of 10 beauty. You don't. There's so many
Yeah.
different characters and types and in every movie. And it hadn't occurred to me yet that that was true. And I said, okay. She said, yeah, you're the tall, skinny, bald guy. They're going to want you for stuff. I said, okay. So when I got off of the cruise ship, I was actually in Calgary, up in Canada. Uh, I found an agent, a talent agent. In those days, it was still phone book. And I went to her office. I said, can you use somebody like me? And she actually had me do like a little mini audition. She gave me a can of Coke and said, okay, read these lines, do a Coke commercial. So I did. I got it wrong. I said Pepsi instead of Coke or the other way around. And but that didn't matter because she said, yeah, I said, you could be that, you could be that scary guy in the dark alley. I said, okay, yeah. So I got typecast instantly, my first second on the job. And next thing I was a couple of weeks, and then I got a job as background, an extra on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV show.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
at that time I was being filmed in Calgary, and I played an alien just walking around in the background. But here's the interesting part about that. They kept us in the back somewhere for hours and hours and hours. And then they finally brought us to set. It was our turn to film. And I got on set, and I swear this is true. I wasn't on set more than 30 seconds. And the hair lady came over, the wardrobe lady came over, and there was three or four of them swarming around me. And they're like, oh my God, we need you for next week's episode because you look like so and so. I was like, okay, okay. so I came back the next week, and they actually wanted me to shave my eyebrows, and I was like, I don't know, really?
Do I have
Yeah.
to?
I said, well, and then I was like, okay, I'll do it, but we never even got that far. I only did like 1 or 2 more days as a photo double for this actor that they brought in. And I said, well, this is really cool. And then I left. I left. I ended up overseas. I met my to-be wife at that time. We had kids. Ended up moving to Florida eventually. And I got to plug in my computer here. Hang on. And I said, one of these days I got to try this acting thing again because what Joe's mom had said was absolutely true. I mean, I was on set 30 seconds and they wanted me for the next episode because of how I looked. So I thought one of these days I got to try it again. And then I found an agent in Miami and I started doing little independent films and stuff like that. And eventually built up the resume and got to do bigger and bigger things. And some time, fast forward to the future, which was about 4 years ago now, I was doing this independent film and they were telling me there's an actor coming, but he can't get hot. We're filming a lot of the stuff outside. He can't get hot. So we're just bringing him in for the day and we have to be really conscious. He's going to have special air conditioning in the tent and stuff like that. I said, what a diva. He can't get hot. We're out here sweating every day. We've been out here for days, we're sweating and he can't get hot. Come on. Well, he showed up. And this was the same guy that I photo doubled for my very first movie experience, my very first TV show experience. It was the same guy that had come full circle. It was Michael Berryman.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
nice.
A
Yeah, I love
legend.
Michael. I mean,
A legend,
to be completely honest, that makes perfect sense. I mean, you
Yes.
got the
Right?
Michael Berryman look,
The
tallness,
head,
the
right? The shape of the
head.
head, the baldness. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And that's why they wanted me to shave the eyebrows,
yeah.
right?
Man.
So I got,
Devil and I just saw him like earlier this year. He came back through at New Jersey Horror Con.
yeah, and he and I are going to be at the same, uh, is it the Tidewater? It might be the Tidewater. I think he's coming to that one too.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
nice.
I think it's
Yeah.
that one. It's either that or another one. But yeah, well, I'm going to get to see him again. But I got to tell him that story because I never got to meet him the first time. He wasn't there that day and those days. And so I got to meet him on this other film, and I told him the whole story. And he says, "That's so cool, man. We got to make a picture." So we ended up getting lots of pictures. He sat there was, I remember one afternoon he sat. We had a lot of time, and he sat on the sofa and just told stories. And I had my camera with me, and I spent like half an hour just taking pictures of him. I got a whole collection of these awesome pictures of Michael Berryman, and while he's telling us all these stories from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
Oh, nice.
Hills of Eyes, these kinds of things. It was a great experience. Yeah. So yeah,
Now,
that's how I got started with acting was that.
Michael Berryman.
There he is. Look at that.
There's the guy.
yeah.
Man, the legend.
Now, I guess the other question of the full story of that. I mean, as far as I know, have you got a chance to ever run into Joseph and tell him, "Hey, man, like about you going into the acting career"?
No, I haven't seen him since that cruise, but I stayed in touch with his mom for quite a few years, just with email, and I'd send her an update every once in a while. So I think I'm pretty sure that I let her know at some point I've started trying the acting thing and it's going pretty well. I
Yeah.
hadn't done anything huge yet, but I was starting out and that was fun. It was fun. And she was always encouraging. She'd always write back and
Yeah.
said, "That's really cool. Keep it up, you'll get there." It was really, really nice family, a lovely family.
Yeah, yeah,
I got to visit them
especially
out in
because, like I said,
California one day.
yeah, yeah, him being so young and stuff like that, and working as a young actor. I mean, that probably is good information to get from the mom because obviously she had to help him and doing all that kind of stuff like that. So she was like, yeah, man, that she kind of probably pushed him maybe to help to push him over to it's like so that you get that little motherly like, hey, it's talking from someone from who's a mom that's been in the industry, with my son and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool that she like was like very, helpful in what became your career.
Yeah, and what you said was absolutely true. Me about getting parts because of how I look. Also, the part where she said that the people in the film industry are cool people. They are. And I always equate it to it's kind of like survival of the fittest. It's a whole Darwinian thing. If you're not good at what you do, and if you're not a kind, pleasant person to work with, you don't get offered the next job.
Yeah.
And that applies for the crew, for the cast. Everybody in the movie business is working from job to job to job, and your reputation spreads quickly. It's a small world, people know each other. So if you start getting a reputation of being an asshole, you don't get invited back to work.
Yeah.
So the people that end up working at the high level in the movie industry are really cool. They're smart, talented, interesting, pleasant people to work with. It really is a cool career to be in, honestly. I mean, we get to play dress up and pretend as a job, as a grown up. I mean, how much better does it get than that? Get to
Yeah.
scream
And
blood
then,
at
I
each
guess
other.
yeah, yeah. And I guess like kind of adding into like, from the beginning of your careers to something that I've read that's newer. I heard rumors, whether so you can say whether it's true or not, maybe if you can, that you're possibly in the new seasons of American Horror Story.
Oh yeah, I can't talk about that.
I think that's that. I think that's that NDA movie he's
That's a whole
participating in.
Yeah,
NDA
that
thing.
NDA.
Yeah.
That,
He's got a starring
I know
role
that's
in
what
a
we
new
always.
movie, NDA.
It's an NDA. Yeah, I'm not allowed to talk about anything like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, so for now I'll have to say those are totally rumors.
Just totally rumors. Oh yeah, we get that all the time. We get we've talked to I almost said who it was. The oh my god, now I can't remember his name.
Tony.
Candyman. Tony
Tony.
Todd. We asked Tony Todd at a con one time right before the new Candyman came out. We're like, "Hey, are you going to be in the new Candyman?" And he was like kind of like giving us this little like I can't
Nah.
say, but same thing. We interviewed, at New Jersey HorrorCon. We interviewed Costas Mandalore about being in the new Saw movie, and he's like, "I can't say anything," giving us little hints. But yeah, most of the time we talk about people with new stuff. They're like, "Yeah, I'm in this new movie. Oh, can you talk about your new project? Yeah, it's called NDA." I'm like, man, everybody is on that. I guess I'm assuming that's the big Hollywood movie. Everybody is in this movie. It's been a movie for the last 40, 50, 60 years now, but it's never
It's
going to come out.
Somebody should really make a movie called NDA at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
I mean, the coolest thing I saw, though, speaking of a weird movie and stuff like that, that's kind of like that. But I saw like now I'm drawing a blank. What the hell is his name? John Malkovich made a movie where him and the director filmed a movie that's not going to come out for like another 100 and some years, and it's in a vault and no one's gonna see it that's alive right now, and the movie is not gonna get no, it's not gonna come out for like another 100 years or something like that.
It's going
I'm
to
like,
get passed down.
I'm like, that's the craziest thing ever. That
That's
nobody who's
interesting.
alive right now will see that movie when it does get premiered. Like it's in a bowl, sealed, and it's not gonna be viewed in for like 100 years. I'm like, that's the craziest thing ever. Like, it makes me want to just like, cryogenic myself so I can see it.
It builds up the suspense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
100 years
exactly.
worth of
Well, I
suspense.
mean, and the good thing about it, if you're a director or an actor and your movie sucks, well, it's not going to really matter because you're going to be long and gone, so you're not going to care what critics think about it.
Well, that's a good point too. Yeah. Yeah.
No, for sure. Well, one thing I think is really like interesting too when it comes to like, character acting, and you were talking, Fedor, about, playing like dress up, getting to do all these different characters. So Devil and I have done a couple of cons in Pennsylvania in like recent years, and the first time we did this con, um Doug Jones was there, who's
Oh yeah.
considered a very, of course, high level epic character actor. And then the next year, Devil and I went back because myself, one of my favorite franchises of all time is Hellraiser. And I really enjoyed the more recent, like Hulu Hellraiser that came out with like the female Pinhead, and I thought that was excellent. I really thought it was well done. But anyway, they had an actor by the name of Jason Lyles there, who also is a character actor as well, who took a lot of experience, a lot of like inspirations from like Doug Jones, because he played the Chatterer character in that Hellraiser movie. But I've always just found it so interesting, when that you have like a certain look or a certain style, whether it would be height or build, that could keep you working consistently. And that's the thing I always found so interesting, talking to somebody like Doug when we met him, Jason when we met him, and now yourself presently, is the idea of like understanding, when you have a skill set for design, that you definitely have these opportunities that will come a calling when they're looking for a certain specific look in a character.
Yeah, yeah. It was really interesting. Not even a couple months ago, about a month ago, I was in LA and we did a music video that should be coming out around October, and I'm pretty excited to share that when it comes out. But they had a whole bunch of us character actors, creature actors there at the same time. And it was so interesting that we are all gathered in this room, must have been a half a dozen of us, and we're all looking at each other. And he's like, yeah, we're all a bunch of weird looking people. We're all kind of tall, gangly, skinny, and we had similar character traits. One of the important character traits to be a creature actor is the ability to just sit still in a makeup chair for 3, 4, 5, 8 hours at a time while they glue things to your face. You can't be claustrophobic. You have to be incredibly a patient person. You have to be physically fit. You have to be strong, because often they put us in these monster suits. Now, that's the reason why they like us skinny, is because when they put on a monster suit, the added bulk doesn't make us huge. The creature,
Yeah.
the being is still relatively small. If they want us to bulk up, they will. They can add foam. But most of the time they don't, they like the skinny to be able to fit in those suits and do all kinds of weird stuff. So we have to be fit to be able to hold that weight up. And the more we talk, the more we realize, yeah, we're all the kind of similar in that regard, the similar character traits, similar body, physical traits. It was so interesting to gather so many of us all in the same room at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And
100%.
then you're talking about working, speaking of that, because character actor and doing stuff like that. We at New Jersey HorrorCon, we actually did interview Kurtzman, and I didn't realize that after we got done doing the interview, and I was looking up stuff, and I knew he had his wife there. I didn't realize that Marcy was as claimed as a makeup artist and all that kind of stuff like that. So I'm like, I told me and Vampire were all like, next time we see them, we're just gonna be like, hey, you move over now. We want to talk to Marcy. This time, because I about to known that to begin with. What I mean? Because they gave him at that New Jersey HorrorCon, they gave him the Icon Award and stuff like that. So like, obviously, I'm a huge fan of Kurtzman, and as far as like the whole makeup and stuff like that, we're huge like fans of like all the stuff that he's done. So, but like I said, I wish I would have known that to begin with, that his wife, because like I said, she was there, and I knew who she was, and I knew that was I knew that was his wife, but I didn't realize. I'm like, man, if I would have known that she was just as established makeup artist and all that, I would have been like, no, join the conversation too. Like, but yeah, talk about working, talk about working with with Bob and Marcy.
Oh, they're wonderful people. They've become good friends of mine, and we visit sometimes when we happen to be in the same city. With Scary Movie 6, it was Marcy and Bob together that did the makeup, and it's interesting how these people work. The makeup artists, they kind of zone off territories. One person does one thing while at the same time the other person's doing another thing. So you got, in that case, two people working on you at the same time. I'm doing another project now where I have 4 people working at me at the same time. They each have a quadrant.
Nice.
Boom, it's divided up by quadrants, front, left, right, back, left, right. And there was a couple of days where it was full body. And I had 6 people working on me at the same time. And it's just like, it's kind of like a football game, there's so much coordination and synchronicity happening. Everybody knows where everybody else is and where their stuff is. And and they work so well together. And you know, I got to say they're incredibly um, nice people.
Oh yeah, they were just like so like we saw them like because he was joking around because it was the Wishmaster. They were having a couple of the guys from Wishmaster and all that,
Yep.
and he was like, "Oh, I'm not going to go to this con." Tell the guys I said hi, tell Andre I said hi and all that, and then he ended up being there. So we
Oh,
just saw him
okay.
again, and they were like, "Hey," and we were talking to him and stuff like that. It was really, yeah, they were like, it's part of, especially with somebody like when you meet, sometimes when you meet some of these actors and these big huge people, you're kind of like you're like, oh my God, like even like I said with them, we gotta, especially when it comes to makeup, we did an interview with V Neil too, and just
Yeah.
so cool and so down to earth. It's you kind of forget like even when you meet some of these big star actors and stuff like that, sometimes you get some of them where you're just like, oh yeah, they're just normal, regular people, and you just don't you forget that they do everything that we do, and they're just as cool. But like I said, sometimes you get those extra people. Like we've worked with a couple people, and like obviously talking about like Felissa and things like that. But we just you meet some of these other people that are just like because people are always, especially in the industry, you got to be nice. You're supposed to be nice to
Yeah.
everybody. And you can kind of have that mentality of like, oh, that person was nice, but you're like, kind of like, well, were they really nice or were they just because they have to be nice? And then you have people, like you said, like, Kurt, Bob and them, they were just so super, like, you could just tell they were just super friendly. It's just
Yeah.
good people to be around.
They're good people. And the reason I bring that up is because you're sitting in that chair for 4 hours or more and you're talking to these people.
Yeah.
And if they're not nice, it turns it into a miserable experience. But it's the fact that they are so nice that makes it bearable, really. You know, when you're sitting there, can't move, and they're applying the makeup to your face, that's what you do is you have conversations and you share life experiences with each other. And it's really what makes it bearable are the people that you end up working with.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because I mean, like you can kind of go, well, okay, if they're not the greatest people, and you're like, oh, I gotta do this makeup and stuff like that. Unless you're getting paid millions and millions of dollars to do this movie, you're like, why the hell am I sitting in this chair, man? I don't want to. Last time I did this movie with this guy, he was just like doing the makeup for 5 hours and didn't say one word to me. I'm like, I don't know. I think something like that would just drive me nuts. I would rather have somebody who is at least wanting to have a conversation, especially if, like you said, you're in a makeup chair for hours and hours, and then you got to
Yeah.
spend in the chair again hours and hours taking off all the stuff.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and it makes the experience so much more bearable when you have a conversation with people that you enjoy spending time with. But yeah, to go back to what you said, we are normal people. Uh, I was out this morning getting groceries. Look, I travel. Here, let me see if she'll cooperate. Come here, come here, come here. With my cat.
Aw. You gotta
Oh,
try. You don't see that too often. I'm gonna give you mad props. You see a lot of traveling dogs, but you don't see too many people traveling with cats.
Yeah, well, she lives with me, and if I'm gone for a couple of weeks, I can't bear the thought of her being completely alone
Oh yeah, we're
for
both
2 weeks.
cat people, so I mean,
Yeah,
I guess I love that. I love the fact that because like normally when you see people who are in the industry, whether they be musicians or actors, yeah, you typically see like they're always dogs. You don't see too many people traveling with their cats. So like, I think that's awesome. That's what I was expecting you to pull out a dog, and I'm like, wait, that's not a dog, that's a kitty.
not a dog. Yeah, she's a pretty good traveler. Yeah, you don't even know she's on the plane with me, and I don't bring her every time. If it's only 3 or 4 days, okay, I can leave her at home and have the neighbors check on her. But if it's a longer stretch, I like to bring her along if I can. Yeah.
absolutely,
Awesome.
for sure.
Nice for
And
me, because I'm not home. So to have a piece of home with me makes it a little bit of a difference.
oh
Jay,
yeah.
bring her on set, and then she's like, "What the? You're all made up," and she's looking like, "I don't know who this guy is."
Yeah, I don't know that that's a very good idea.
Definitely would probably be some culture shock when it came to that one.
Yeah, she wouldn't like that at all. She's not a people cat, really. But
Oh, okay. She likes dad, and that's it.
yep, yep.
For sure. And another thing that I definitely wanted to ask you about is an experience as well, because I'm a fan of the original, and I really definitely wanted to ask you about yourself playing Ezra.
Oh yeah.
So I
Yeah, yeah.
definitely wanted to ask you a little bit about what you remember from your experience filming the Haunted Mansion.
Well, that was absolutely amazing because I got to work with two other great guys, Mike Benitez and Terrence Rosemore. They played the other two ghosts.
Mhm.
Uh, and those guys we became like brothers, really. We had such a good time. We actually ended up filming, I want to say it was over a span of 3 or 4 weeks. We filmed a lot together. And um, Justin Simeon, the director, was very open to us ad-libbing. This is what the word I'm looking for. We ad-libbed a lot. We came up with lines, so many lines, and we thought we were hilarious. It was really, and actually, Justin came to us afterwards, and we asked, is it okay that we're doing this stuff, that we're making stuff up? And he says, yeah, I love it. It's so good. We're laughing our heads off back there. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. And I was all right. So we came up with a lot of stuff. Every time we filmed a scene, and we filmed a whole bunch of different scenes. We were so excited, and we couldn't wait for the film to come out. And unfortunately, when it came out, they cut all of that out, and
Oh,
and they left us. We were in there for maybe 4 or 5 seconds. Mike got
Yeah.
one line in there. The other, Terrence and I, we just had our thumbs out, and that was it. That was all that was left. And then now they put a little bit of that in the DVD extras or on YouTube or something, some outtakes or whatever, so you can see a little bit more of what we did. But we did a whole bunch of stuff, and we were really excited. And because you know what, it's they're iconic characters. They're iconic to Disney. They're iconic to the Haunted
Yeah.
Mansion ride, or they were iconic to the movie. And in fact, they on set they had T-shirts with the hitchhiking ghosts and hats with the hitchhiking ghosts and bumper stickers and badges, and we were all over the place. And we thought, oh, I want to say I was number 8 or 9 on the call sheet, right behind Rosario Dawson, Owen Wilson,
Yeah.
Lakeith Stanfield, Danny DeVito, Jamie Lee Curtis, and then me. I was right there with them. And then it ended up being 4 or 5 seconds. So that was a bit of a bummer, but the experience itself was amazing.
Oh yeah, I mean that's like I said, that was my only huge gripe of that Haunted Mansion version. I mean, I like the original one too, but the newer one, that was my only thing was, yeah, these are, like you said, those are iconic characters. Everybody knows them. They needed a little bit more screen time than the, like you said, the 2 seconds you see them for,
Yeah.
on that. I was like, man, they got that. I was like, oh man, I felt like, man, I wish they would have had them in more, but that's cool that they actually filmed more. But I know how the world goes. You got to
Well,
edit, you got to take things out, you got to make things, okay, now you need to make this 2 hour movie an hour and a half. Now you got to cut out 30 minutes of stuff, and then it's like,
that's exactly what happened, I think. And the movie was still kind of long. It was actually, I think, 2 hours and I want to say 9 minutes or something like that. So it was already a fairly long movie. So I'm sure that the rough cut was even way longer. And they just had to cut stuff. And what we filmed was not germane to the story. So I get it. If it's not integral to the story, it's got to go, as great as it is. Um, there was another moment where I was briefly ecstatic. There was a scene. We got the script, and I was at the very end of the movie. It was, I think, the last day, and in the script it was me and Owen Wilson, and Owen Wilson comes up to me, and there's this portal that opens up, and Owen Wilson asked me, "Hey, where does that portal go?" And I say, "Oh, it goes to all the magical places around the world." And he says, "Oh, can you take me with you?" Owen Wilson says that to me, "Can you take me with you?" And I said, "Well, for you know, three three to five. We negotiate, this percentage split. And I said to my other hitchhiking ghosts, so you know what this is? Do you realize what this is? This is a sequel. Owen Wilson and the three hitchhiking ghosts traveling the world on crazy wild adventures.
yeah,
And I got so excited. I said, boys, this is our own movie. And just rubbing my hands in glee. And then the day we were supposed to film it, we filmed, and I was getting ready for the scene. And then I said, okay, we're wrapped for the day. And like, what? What about that scene? I went to Justin, director. what happened? He said, studio cut it. And I went, what? I was so excited about that. He said, yeah, me too, but the studio cut it. And so
Oh,
we never filmed it.
No,
And
oh, it
man.
didn't even get filmed. Damn.
I know. So, and then for a couple of years afterwards, after the movie came out, because the movie, the Haunted Mansion, I really liked it. I
Mhm.
mean, I enjoyed it. It was clever. It was funny. It
Mhm.
was heartwarming. It had all those elements. The scary bits. It was great for kids. Not too scary, but scary enough. And really, I thought turned out great. So, and it did super well in streaming.
Yeah.
I don't know that it did that great in the theaters, but it did super well on streaming.
Okay.
And I thought, well, maybe they'll revive that idea. So for a couple of years afterwards, I was kept waiting for that call. So we're gonna, make the sequel, but it never happened. So let's get that word out. Maybe they'll still do it. I'm game.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, like, as being a character actor and stuff like that, and going into that, how does someone like like yourself feel when you go into the makeup count thing? You're 6 to 8 hours doing makeup or whatever like that, film your scenes, and then your scenes get cut, and do you kind of go, like, damn it, man, I wasted all that time in the thing for this cool thing, or you just go, well, it's another job. I got what
Yeah. I've kind of gotten over it because in the early days it certainly did hurt a lot. And
Yeah.
now it's happened enough that I said, well, that's just a business. I mean, that it's not because you didn't do a great job, it's because they have to make these decisions about the length of the film, the flow of the story, blah, blah, blah. The first time that happened to me, it hurt a lot. I was in Burn Notice. Remember that show, Burn Notice? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had been trying this still pretty early in my career, and I was really, trying to get on the show. I auditioned over and over and over again. I finally got on the show, and I think it was the third or fourth last episode, and then the show was done, done, done. And I got to go on there. I met all the main cast. Um, I was so thrilled to meet all of them and be there. And I did my scene. It was great. And whatever, a couple months later, it was going to air on TV. I told my whole family, I told all my friends. It aired. And after about an hour, I started getting messages. They said, "We didn't see you." And I was like, "Oh, you must have just missed it." But then, somebody else did the same thing, and then somebody else, and somebody else. And then actually, the writer sent me a message from the show. And he said, "I'm sure you've heard by now, we ended up having to cut your scene for time because same thing. And that was on TV, so it had to be 42 minutes. And my
Yeah.
part was not really integral to the story, so it got cut." Well, the lesson I learned from that is don't tell your friends and family you're going to be on anything until you're absolutely 100% sure you're actually in it. Um, Now, Scary Movie, I felt a little bit more comfortable with because I was in the trailer, right?
Yeah.
So then I can, okay, go see it. But yeah, most of the time I don't even tell anybody until I'm 100% sure that I'm in it or that I've actually seen myself in it. Years later, I finally, because we didn't have cable TV, so I couldn't watch that episode of Burn Notice myself. That's why I didn't know until my friends texted me. But whatever it was, a year or two later, I finally got to watch it, and I did see myself. If you look very closely at that scene, you just see the tip of my elbow leave the screen like that. That's all you see. Tip
My
of my
elbow has
elbow.
a credit.
Yep. Well, the credit's still there, and I still get residuals for that. I still get.
Yeah,
Yep.
Motley wants a credit too.
Hey, hello, hello. Yeah, yeah.
You
Burn
just
Notice. I still get about 56 cents a year for that appearance. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah.
We were talking about that. Like, me and Vampire were talking about off air about one time we were talking about like the residuals and stuff like that because the girl who the middle child Stephanie from Full House was talking about getting the residual checks and stuff like that. People are like, oh man, you must be rolling in the money now, and he's like, not anymore. It's not syndicated anymore. Like when it was still on syndication all the time. Yeah, those. He's like, nobody watches it really anymore now. Like, she got eventually when Fuller House came out, she started getting some from that. But yeah, it's like it's always funny whenever I see people on actors would be like, oh, I got my 32-cent check for my residuals or and stuff like that. It's so glamorous that everybody thinks that, like, you're gonna end up doing this this kind of stuff, that you're gonna all be like making, Keanu Reeves and, Brad Pitt kind of money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I think I noticed that when during the last actors strike, people were talking about, oh, you guys get paid so much and you're going on strike again. I said, well, the top 0.2% of actors make a gazillion dollars.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, the A-listers, right? They do. They make a really good living. They're constantly working. They can ask for the millions because studios are willing to pay for that. But 99% of the other actors, we're going job to job, and you never know when the next job is going to be. You might only get one or two jobs a year for a couple of days, even. And so, yeah, okay, we make a fair bit of money on that day, but it might be months, if not years, before the next couple of days of work. So the majority of us have day jobs. Majority
Yeah.
of us, we're carpenters and construction workers, whatever. I work in technology. Um, we all have something else that we do. And hopefully, thankfully, if things work out nicely, it's a job that gives you a lot of flexibility so that when you do get an acting job, you can take the time off to go and do it. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, the vast majority of us can't live on acting alone. That's a huge challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I even joke around about it all the time. Like, if you look back in in the '60s, well, probably more in the '70s, but like football stars, even the big football stars, when they weren't, playing football for those months, they all had regular jobs because it wasn't back in the day, when you were making nowadays, when you got somebody who's top quarterback making $40 million a year or something like that, that kind of stuff like that, they didn't make it. Yeah, like you said, especially with the actors and stuff like that. I always get mad when people, like, with the strikes. I'm like, yeah, I was like, the strikes are not for those A-listers. It's for all the small people. It's all for the writers. It's for those people. Yes, even the writer strikes. Yeah, okay, yes. Granted, these big writers and stuff like that, they're not they're all right. They'll survive because they're living in their mansions and they got millions and millions of dollars they get paid. I mean, even like someone like, I love David Duchovny, but I mean, you look at the fact that, like, towards the end of X-Files, he made it in his contract that they were going to give him $1 million every episode. Hence, reason why they brought in, Robert Patrick and stuff like that and made another character, because they were like, yeah, we can't keep paying David Duchovny $1 million every time he wants an episode, and he's on 18, 20 some episodes a season. Like, it's insane, you know what I mean? But that's
Yeah.
what people don't realize. It's like, yeah, it's those working actors that are like literally, are doing the same thing that me or you or anybody else in the world is doing, living paycheck to paycheck. They're just paycheck to paycheck's a little bit different because you're seeing them on TV or you're seeing them in a movie. But yeah, everybody thinks it's like a huge glamorous life, and I'm like, yeah, it can be, but it's not always.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a career where you're pumping out, say, I've had a pretty good stretch in the last couple of years, so I've had like two or three releases per year. But then when you add up how many days on set that is,
Yeah.
you're talking a week or two total days for the whole year. And Scary Movie, that was one day on set.
Yeah.
Doctor
Yeah.
Sleep, one day on set.
I
I
mean, it
was
was
gonna say, even talking
I
about
mean,
that too,
Devil,
because I
remember?
looked.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry,
wait,
Devil.
like you were talking about, 1 day sets and stuff like that. I saw on your IMDb list that you worked on Stranger Things on one episode. So,
Yeah.
stuff like that where it's
That was
like,
one day.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're like, you're on what is considered probably the biggest thing on Netflix right there, and you're like, well, yeah, those guys are all making the big bucks.
Yeah.
I'm a day player.
Yeah, day playing. That's exactly what most of us do. We're day playing. Unless you get locked in as a regular on a series, you're mostly day playing, or you get to be up there as an A-lister. That's why you see a lot of us at the conventions. Come visit us at the table.
Yeah. No, I mean, Fedor, when we saw you at Maryland Pop and Horror, it was also Devil and I's opportunity to reconnect with another, friend, acquaintance in Lachlan Monroe,
Yeah.
from Scary Movie 6 with you. And Lachlan's been great to us. And the only reason I bring him up is actually because it's kind of apropos to the conversation we're currently having. When Devil and I interviewed him, we actually spoke quite a lot about the writer's strike, because at the time that we had done that interview, it was just however it had played into our conversation. I don't remember offhand if it was because of a specific movie we referenced him to talk about, or we were just talking about like con life. But it was also really interesting because he was also talking about, because you also hear about this in certain aspects where even just doing conventions was very different for, actors and actresses doing these conventions, because during the strike, from my understanding, based off what Lachlan was telling us, like they weren't allowed to sign in certain ways. Like obviously their signatures and whatnot, those are completely the same, but there were, depending on the convention or depending on maybe the area, and Devil, you can correct me if I'm wrong on certain things, but it was like there were certain aspects of, there were restrictions. I mean, when it came to like quotes you could write, where sometimes it's very common for an actor to write their character's name or a certain quote they're known for. But he was actually telling us, he's like, yeah, there were certain times that was actually very tricky, because there were actually some restrictions because of the writer strikes with even the simplistic of what they were allowed to write on a poster.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, fortunately, I haven't had to deal with that kind of thing yet. But there was, yeah, I know, I remember during the writers strike, people were super sensitive
mhm.
about
Yeah.
what you could and couldn't do. I mean, it overlapped with the actors strike. And that's actually when I was on Evil. And I remember we had to halt production for the strikes. And it's a tricky time. It's a
Yeah.
tricky time because we all want to work, but at the same time, we want to support what's happening, and be there for the union and for the other people that are struggling to work. I was lucky; I still have a day job, so I wasn't struggling. But there are a lot of people that count on that income, and then it goes months and months without it. It's hard because when the
Yeah.
actors
Yeah.
go on strike, when the writers go on strike, the crew can't work. Even though they're not on
Yeah.
strike, they can't work. So those are the people I really felt sorry for because it wasn't even their strike and they couldn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that was the crazy thing, even just with, with the blackout a few years ago, with the plague, was the fact
Yeah.
that like, it wasn't just a matter, even just like what Devil was talking about with something like sports, it's like, well, these sports were getting halted for a little while, but that doesn't mean that, the camera crews, the field maintenance technicians, like all these people that are used to working, during the season
The
behind the
vendors, all the
scenes, the,
vendors
the
that,
vendors, yeah, everybody that worked in concessions, the cleaning and so on and so forth. Yeah, there a lot of people, they forget that like the people that you see on screen for 2 hours, and Devil will attest to this, like he and I are movie guys. Like we genuinely are movie guys. Of course, we love being at home with Mrs. Vamp and Mrs. Devil and watching movies in our at home, and adding to our collections that you keep seeing behind us. But we're also movie guys. Like we enjoy going to the theater and getting lost for 2 hours in that comfy chair in a dark room there.
yeah,
But so many people forget that, for 2 hours we get to look at, Fedor Steer, or Marlon Wayans or Lachlan Monroe. But there's so many people that are not on screen that are just as valuable to why we're able to watch this on screen, that it's just very easily forgotten about.
yeah. An example I can give you is at Halloween. I get this a lot at Halloween because I'm doing a lot of creature work. At Halloween, my friends come up to me and said, Fedor, your Halloween costume, tell me it's going to be amazing. It's got to be incredible, the things that you do. I said, no, it's going to suck. Really, it's going to suck because what you see on screen isn't me. I don't apply this makeup. It's a
Yeah. I didn't do all this.
team of people. And I mentioned before, it was, 2, 3, 4, up to 6 makeup artists working on me. And then there's the people who are back in the shop creating the prosthetics, the masks, and stuff like that. The wig that is made, those wigs are thousands of dollars, because every hair, it's an actual human hair, gets stitched in one at a time. They are thousands of dollars, those wigs. Somebody spent a lot of time making that. The costumes, there's a whole wardrobe department, people who create the costume, design, then make, fit it, and then dress you on set. So when I go to set, and there's props too. So when I go to set, sometimes I have a train of about 12 people following me. with all the bits and pieces. And then when what we do is when we're almost ready to film, the assistant director, the AD, will call last looks, and this whole entourage of people come swarming around you, and they do little touch-ups and stuff, make sure everything's perfect. Your hair is there. Suddenly I find somebody with their hand down my pants, tucking in my shirt, and that's always a surprise. And then they disappear again, and then you film. So up until that moment, I'm really doing very little of the work. It's this whole giant team of people. And I don't know how many more are behind them and getting things ready. It's all them. So don't expect much from me on Halloween. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's why that's why I always joke around like when people like that are that they're like, oh, what are you gonna go up to? Like my favorite time of Halloween, in all honesty, is two things. I always want to go and see what Heidi Klum's gonna do because she's like the queen of like doing like the big, huge, extravagant
Something
makeup.
outrageous.
She's
Yeah.
had Beaten Hill and stuff like that work on her. Like it's insane. She gets these top makeup artists to do that stuff. And I always like Neil Patrick Harris and his family always dressing up and stuff like that. But yeah, it's always like funny. Like I did an interview years ago with the guitar player from Twisted Sister, and talking about working with on Pee Wee's Big Adventure, and you know the scene with Twisted Sister comes in and stuff like that. And he was on set, and he was like bored, and they were just waiting for their time to go. So he went on one of the bicycles and started riding it, and they were yelling, "Get the F off this! Those are
Yeah.
like $10,000 a piece or some ridiculously amount." And he was like, sorry. People don't realize it's like, yeah, it's like, being a creature person, stuff like that. Some of those props and things like that, that's a lot of money. You got to be 100% careful with that. I remember before they were talking about with like, Robert England was talking about one time where he had the makeup on, and they were supposed to film, and then they didn't film, and then they were like, oh, we're gonna film in the morning, so just keep it on. But he was getting that, and he like ripped it off at one point, and they got
Oh,
so mad but he was just like, I'm not sitting in this for 12 more hours when we're not gonna film. And they were like, oh, yeah. But I was like, yeah, you gotta realize that's a lot of work. But then again, it's like, you're not it's a lot of work. I understand it's a lot of money, but you're not the one that has to wear it for another
yeah.
13 hours or something like that.
There,
Yeah,
there,
to even get to the point where you start filming, and then it could be a 12, 14,
Yeah.
16 hour day after that. So no, I'm totally there with him, man. I don't think no, I know I have never done that, worn makeup overnight. It's always comes off at the end of the day, and you get 12 hours, and you come back and you start all over, and it gets all put back on again. It's a tremendous amount of work. It is, it really is. But that's the process.
I remember hearing recently, I've actually heard this story a lot in recently, just with a lot of the socials and stuff like that, and little like music video, movie feeds that pop through on like the Facebooks and the TikToks and stuff like that, where I've been hearing a lot about these stories of apparently a very well documented situation with Tim Curry from Legend from back in the 80s, with him playing, Satan, and and him playing one of Devil's Brethren, the guy, where he is actually, it's well documented that Tim happens to be very claustrophobic. And while he's such an amazing actor, and Devil and I are very fond of him, you can definitely understand something with having prosthetics like that, those giant horns, and having those kinds of things on him, where he definitely, had a moment where he had to get them off his skin. When I can definitely understand, something like that, where it's definitely going to take a certain amount of just, understanding and mental preparation, that when you have this stuff applied over long periods of time, especially where something with that story, with Tim playing such a major character that's going to be on film for such a long amount of time, I can definitely understand something like that for sure. But Fedor, is there a particular character that you yourself have really enjoyed playing so far in your career, where you're like, I really loved that role or that character?
Yeah, I got to say that Ezra Ghost was so much fun because, like I said, well, first of all, that makeup was a lot more comfortable than most because it was just the pieces glued to my face and the neck, and that's it. And then I could wear pretty much normal clothes beyond that. That makes a big difference because a lot of these costumes involve body pieces as well. a whole Evil. I did a lot of bodysuits in Evil,
Yeah.
especially a massive stick demon, which appeared in the last 3 or 4 episodes in the last season. It was so huge and bulky. There were horns and chains and human heads hanging from my belt, and I'm dragging bodies, and it's about 6 or 8 inches of styrofoam, giant hands, mechanical hands. I took 4 steps, and the body temperature just shot up inside. It was so hot inside, and I had a
Wow.
cooling vest, but it wasn't working. And I did Red One. I actually played a character I wasn't supposed to play. I wore somebody else's suit, and it was just a little tight on the neck. So I spent when we weren't filming, I just was trying to pull down on the neck to keep it from chafing. So it's, we're being paid to suffer a lot. We really,
That
really.
was the Krampus character, wasn't it?
No, not I wasn't Krampus. I was
Red one?
I started off playing a fish. And if you look carefully in that scene and freeze frame it, you'll see the fish in there intermittently.
Oh
But
God.
I also played the vulture that was in that Krampus castle, kind of judging the
Okay.
slap fest, the slap fight.
Oh,
Yeah, so that Marty Matulis originally played that character, but that he couldn't finish, and I stepped in, and it so happened that Marty and I were almost the same size, same head shape, everything, so I could fit into his costume. But
gotcha.
but my torso was, I guess, just a half inch longer than his, so it was a bit tight on my neck. And yeah, it got super uncomfortable. And it was actually through Marty that I ended up going on Evil as well, because Marty played all the devils for the first 3.5 seasons, all the demons, I mean, for the first 3.5 seasons. And then for the last, I think it's 8 episodes, I play most of the demons, um, purely because I happen to be Marty's size. Um, but going back to your original question, that Ezra Ghost was a fun character, and it was especially fun because I got to riff with Mike and Terrence and just play with it, and just and do comedy. I want to do more comedy stuff, instead of always just do improv, make stuff up and play off of each other. That makes it fun. It really makes it
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, because when we talked to the like he said earlier, we talked to the guy that was the chatter from the Hulu, Hellraiser. He was talking about on a movie that he was doing where he had this big, huge like suit that was like took like 16 people to get him in this bodysuit, and he was like, as soon as you put that thing on, you bet you're not peeing for the next like X amount
No,
of hours, and so he's like yeah, he was like because as soon as you do that and you tell the prop people and the makeup people, they're like, no, no, we're not taking that back off again. Like,
Hold it.
no.
you better hold it, or you better hope you got wear some Depends or something like that. Then,
Devil,
Yeah, yeah.
I think that was when he was talking about the Rampage movie when he was the giant like ape, I
yeah, it
think.
might have been that one. I just remember he was saying he was wearing a suit where, yeah, he was like, he got it up and he was like, oh god, he's like, but he said he held it for like more longer than he should have ever like, humanly held it because he was like, he saw those people and they were like. He gave him that look like, oh, he's got to use the bathroom. They're like,
Nope, nope. No,
nope.
so yeah, when we wear those suits, it's definitely those are days where we don't eat or drink too much. A
Yeah.
couple reasons. One is when you eat and drink, it kind of tends to loosen up the makeup around the mouth,
Yeah,
and then they have to come in and glue it back down again. So it's a bit of a pain. But that's the second reason is that now the suits I've worn, they had a flap in the crotch. So that
that makes
allows
it nice.
you can do the number one, but it's
Yeah,
awkward because you got long fingernails glued on or whatever, or finger
you
extensions. It,
got to get an assistant to help you out.
I was actually just thinking, have I ever asked anybody to help me? I don't think I have. I have asked somebody to tuck me back in a little bit because I couldn't quite get it all situated again. But definitely cannot do a number two. So you don't. I mean, we prep for that. We know it's coming. So it's always like, okay, we're going to go for the suit. Last chance to go to the bathroom, and even if you don't feel like you have to go, you give it a good shot, and then
Yeah,
and then you're locked in. Yeah, you're locked in.
Oh
It's kind
Yeah,
of
man.
a lonely
it's
world.
like NASCAR racers,
Oh
Yeah.
NASCAR drivers. You know what I mean? I watched the thing where they were talking about, asking the person, "Have you ever peed while you're driving?" They're like, "No, no, no." It was like 10 no's in a row, and then one guy was like, "Yeah," and they're like, "You're the only person that said yeah," and they're like, "Yeah, all those other guys are lying. If they have told you they've never peed while in a race, that they just don't want to admit to it."
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely an interesting experience, and yeah, we planned for that. Absolutely. I've
Oh
never
no.
had to wear Depends. I've never gone that far, but
But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it for sure.
yeah, well, hopefully not.
Absolutely. No, exactly, for sure. But Fedor, also one thing we definitely want to make sure that we touch base on is, as we're about halfway through this year, of course, with that movie that we know you're starring in called NDA, is there anything in general that you can tell us, or as well, of course, your fans, just kind of about what you have planned for this year, or just things that you're maybe in discussion about?
Yeah, okay. So one thing I can talk about is there's a movie coming out in early 2027. Last I heard it was probably around Valentine's Day. I think it's a horror movie, but one of the producers explained to me the logic and said, Valentine's Day is all rom-coms and stuff like that. So we want to give audiences an alternative. So they're looking at releasing it Valentine's Day 2027, last I heard. It's called Crossed. And if
Nice.
any of you are Garth Ennis fans, from The
Oh,
Boy,
yes.
Preacher, I mean, he's the
Yeah.
creator of those graphic novels, right, that have been turned into hugely successful
Yeah,
shows.
I love the Preacher series.
Oh yeah, Preacher and the Boys is fantastic. So there's
Yeah.
another graphic novel that he had called Crossed, and so I've talked to some people who are familiar with it, and they're like, "Yes," and I tell them, "Well, we made a movie based on that first um, volume of Crossed," and they're like,
Nice.
"What?" And they're so excited about it because people who know it really know it, and
Yeah, I was that same way with Preacher. Like when I heard about that, I was like, "Oh my God, how are they going to be able to pull this off?" Because it's such
yeah.
a crazy, really, there's a lot of weird shit in that graphic novel.
And there is in Crossed as well. And if you're familiar with that novel, and if you're not, I would go ahead and buy it from Amazon.
I'll
It's
have to
there.
check it
That's where I
out.
got my copy. And it is tailor-made for the true horror fans. And if you know Garth Ennis, he gets
Yeah.
pretty graphic in his graphic novels. It's vile. Uh, the first I would guess 20 or 30 minutes of the movie is pure gore, pretty much
No,
pure
nice.
gore. Like nice, he says. Yeah, if you could,
Yes.
any way you can think of how a human can um, make another human suffer, any way you can think of, it's kind of like Final Destination, just 100 different ways you can kill somebody. It is pure gore. And so for people who are fans of that, this is the movie for you. After that, the movie kind of story kind of transitions to a post-apocalyptic thing. So the Crossed are people. It's kind of along the lines of a zombie movie, zombie apocalyptic kind of thing. Except instead of zombies, the people are infected by a virus, and when they
Okay.
are infected by this virus, they get this massive open wound in a cross shape across their face, which identifies them. But they also become homicidal maniacs. So all these people who become infected go around slaughtering people, as I said, in the most vile, horrible way you can imagine. Now,
Oh,
there's a bunch of humans, of course, that are avoiding getting infected. They try to escape, but there's one set of these crossed that become like a little tribe who have a little bit more intelligence than the rest of the mob, and they try to track them down. And without giving away too much, I'm one of those crossed that
Oh, nice.
track them down. And even though it's very much a horror movie in the true sense of the word, I think the cinematography is going to be amazing. Just looking over the DP's shoulder and the cameraman's shoulder, watching them film stuff, it's like it looks beautiful. It really looks beautiful. It's going to be, I think, first class. It's going to look really good. There's some good names, actors in there that I think people will recognize. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that one come out. I think of how we've had in the recent months Obsession,
Yeah.
Backrooms, these lower budget horror films are doing incredibly well, and I think this is another one that's going to
Yeah,
that.
we were just talking about that with that obsession. We were looking at it like
Yeah.
$700,000 budget or something like that, and it's made 420 some or like some hundred $800 million or something worldwide or something like that. We're like,
Crazy,
geez,
crazy.
that's crazy. It's just crazy to think about
Yeah.
that and stuff like that. Where even like we were talking about with Art the Clown and Terrifier being like such a DIY kind of independent film. And then people were like, oh my God, these, independent horror films can be this blockbuster and this good. And I'm like, where have you been forever? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some of the best horror films in the world have been independent films. People forget that, someone like Sam Raimi, who, did
Yep.
Spider-Man and stuff like that, all these big blockbuster movies, made Evil Dead. You got someone like, Peter Jackson that did Brain Dead, who went off to do Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. Like a
Yeah.
lot of your big, huge directors that are looked at now that are these huge directors started off with independent horror films a lot of times.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many. Blair Witch Project, another
Blair
one.
Witch, yeah.
Yes.
There's so many more that have become genre
Yeah.
defining. And I'm hoping that Cross will be another one of those. I really think it could do very, very well. So
And
I'm curious to
Fedor,
see how it
that's
comes out.
planned. That's a theatrical release for Crossed.
Theatrical release. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Devil
It's on
sounds like you're taking
IMDb.
out the ladies.
Yeah, so that's the bring out your ladies night.
Yep, absolutely.
Fortunately for us, our ladies like gore and horror stuff, so we're good. We're not gonna get scorned after taking our ladies to go see something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't want to give away too much, but my character wears an iconic costume.
No, nice.
Iconic. It is going to be so memorable, you won't be able to unsee it. Uh, I'll leave it at that.
It's gonna be cosplayed for years later.
I would hope so, because that would be so much fun.
I mean, speaking of that, doing cons and stuff like that, I'm not sure how long you've been doing the con scene, but have you ever had anybody cosplay any of the characters that you've played before? I mean, obviously, other than Art the Clown, because
Well, Art the Clown now, yeah, but I feel like I'm more cosplaying Art the Clown
yeah.
than because that's how I stepped into it. Uh, not that I can remember, and so I have to be honest. I'm a little bit jealous of David Howard Thornton and those guys and others, where their character has exploded into cultural literacy.
Yeah.
You go to a con and you see Jason and Freddy and now Art and all the others. Chucky. This is like what, about 8 or 10 or 12 iconic horror characters
Yeah.
that are all the paintings, the sculptures, all that artwork that you see at the cons. And I'm hoping one of these days, one of my characters will be in that lineup, because that is the dream, right? As a
Yeah.
kid, as a creature actor, especially.
Oh yeah, especially because I mean, for me personally, I think, looking through the characters that you've played and stuff like that, even though, like you said, it's like one early scene, but I really loved like just the visual of your character from Doctor Sleep. I think that was just a cool looking concepted character. I just thought it was just awesome. That's something that I wish that like people would see that and be like, "Oh my God, that's what I need to do." Just so anybody out there in the con world that's tall, has that physique, man, that'd be a cool one to do, because I think that's such an awesome look, especially because I like like when you see the picture of like you with the Grady, with the Grady twins and stuff like that. It's
I love that
cool
picture.
look.
I love that picture. Yeah, we just took that one backstage with somebody's
Yeah,
phone, we were all kind of hanging out and the twins were there. And I was like, and they had no idea how iconic their characters
yeah.
were. They had no idea. They had never seen The Shining and stuff. I said, you guys are going to be remembered for a long time. But anyway, I said, I got to get a picture. So we took that picture. We were like right there. Um, One character that I have seen people dress up as at Halloween is the bowler hat ghost from Haunting of Hill House, William Hill.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen, especially when it first came out, that first year or two, especially that first year, there
yeah.
were
That blew up.
a lot of people I saw videos and pictures that dressed up as bowler hat man for Halloween, and that was cool. And I've had people send me pictures of their tattoos. I've had people tattoo bowler hat man on
Oh, nice.
themselves,
I
and
was gonna ask about that. Have you had anybody inked on you? Because I know people have always said so weird seeing like my face tat. You're permanently on someone's body and stuff like
someone's
that. Like
body. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I've never seen it in person yet. You know, people have just sent me pictures of their tattoos of me, and I think that's pretty cool. I've never seen it in person, so if anybody out there has one and they want to share it with me at the next con, I would be so interested in seeing that.
Maybe I'll have to consider an Ezra because I do love my haunted mansion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's super duper awesome. And one of the things that I also think is like really, really cool, just like with the idea of like, again, just characters and how they're portrayed. I mean, like you were saying, I mean, with everything that we hope that Crossed can do, the idea of, these crossed face, characters, that's definitely something that, could potentially be like that next thing that kind of takes over cons or takes over like Halloween, when you see the characters, come out. Like Devil and I did a con one time, and we're both big fans, and Mrs. Vamp is a huge fan. We're all collectively big fans of like Repo the Genetic Opera, and we would see people that would do like characters like the Grave Robber or like Blind Mag or things like that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely familiar with
Yeah, I mean, even with
characters.
movies, yeah, even with movies that, like, to me personally, I've never been a huge fan of them. We've talked about it before, nauseum. But like something like The Purge, but like even just that merchandising. I mean, that when that movie came out, everybody was dressed up like that. You have Stranger Things. We joked around about it. Man, that season when Eddie was there, everybody and their mother was dressed up as Eddie for Halloween. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like you never really know what's going to be that trend for that Halloween thing. So.
No, no, and that's every actor's dream, that every actor's dream that you happen to hit on that franchise that takes off. And now we were talking about Bob Kurtzman, and I was sitting in the makeup chair talking to Bob, and I said, Bob, you've been in this business a long time. I mean, really, he's a legend. If anybody
Yeah.
doesn't know who he is, look up his credits. It's
Oh yeah.
Yeah, his
unreal.
his credits are insane. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just the stuff that he's done, obviously with K and B and stuff like that previous, and then
And then Quentin
afterwards.
Tarantino, I mean, the
Oh,
whole thing with Quentin Tarantino, he was part of that story of when he got started, and
Yeah,
so many stories he has. But I asked Bob, I said, you've been in this business such a long time. You've been on so many movie sets. Are you starting to, do you feel like after all these years, you have an idea of which movies are going to be successful and which are going to flop? And he says, Fedor, I haven't got a clue. That's not how he phrased it. He was more profane than that. But it was he said, sometimes you're on a set and you think, my God, this is a great story. The director is amazing. The actors are incredible. Everybody's friendly. Everything's ticking. It's running so well. The scenes are beautifully shot. It's such an incredible story. It releases and nobody watches it. And then you're on another production and it's an absolute shit show. It's a sucky story. The actors are all angry and don't want to be there. The director doesn't know what he's doing. Um, there's nothing going right. And it becomes a huge hit.
like iconic.
Yeah. There's really no predicting that kind of thing. It's so hard to know whether something will take off or not. It's a fickle business, I guess, is all you can say. What's going to appeal to the audience, what is not. Sometimes it's timing. When Doctor Sleep came out about 2 weeks after Halloween. I'm not sure why they did that. I think most people, after you hit Halloween, your brain goes to Thanksgiving and Christmas. You know, so I'm not sure why they didn't release it 2 weeks before Halloween. Maybe they thought
Yeah.
there was too many other films coming out then, it would be too much competition. So let's let the rush pass and then we'll release ours, but it didn't work. I don't know what their logic was, but it could be that something small like timing or what else is going on in the world, whether people feel like watching that movie or not.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 'cause like I said, especially even with like scary movie, you guys' movie was supposed to come out on the 11th, and then they moved it up to the 4th, and like before that, it was the same time that Masters of the Universe was out, and I'm like, that was the plan for me to go see that for my birthday because I'm a huge He-Man fan, but I'm like, no, I want to go see Scary Movie instead, just because now I got to go see this and stuff like that. And it's so great because when you talk about that, we talked about DeLachlan about that because he asked us like how we really felt about the movie, like truly as because he knows that we're definitely film people. And I was like, I told him I was like, our consensus was it kind of started off a little slow. But then once it started going, that movie was great. I loved it and stuff like that. And it
Oh
was so great. It was so great to have the Wayans back. It's like especially because a lot of people didn't know until that big interview came out. With him and I can't remember his name now, but he did that interview where he talked about losing that franchise and stuff like that, and how people realize that okay, they one and two are really good. Three was funny, but there was something off, and then four and five were not maybe not as great, and then you didn't realize, oh, well, three is because they stole their idea from them. Four and five they weren't there, and they brought it back, got it back to there. So it was like to me, it was like so great to have that back where it's like yeah, not everything is gonna hit. Not every joke is gonna land. Not every joke is gonna, what I think is funny. Ha ha ha. Someone else is gonna be like, I don't know about that joke. That's the beauty thing about that. But you were talking about critics. I'm like, dude, you go back to that first scary movie, which is iconic. The critics hate it. You look at
Yeah.
IMDb, it's not a very highly rated
No,
IMDb
no.
movie at all, which is insane. Because I'm like, dude, I
right.
mean, if it wasn't for Scary Movie, you would have had 90 million of those parody films. I mean, they're not the first person to parody, movies and stuff like that. But they brought that trend of bringing back those ones like Naked Gun and doing like that, and kind of
Yeah.
brought back those
Yeah, yeah.
parodies. It's
Yeah.
crazy to think
I
about
mean, yeah,
that.
Scary Movie is not out to win awards. It's there to laugh. And like you said, not every joke hits every person the same way. Because I saw it in the theater two nights in a row because I went to watch it with one set of friends who had a kid in the movie. And then went to see it with another set of friends who also had a kid in the movie from that Santa Claus scene.
Okay.
So I watched it two nights in a row. And it was interesting to see it was different where people laughed. And even within that same audience, there were some scenes where there was somebody sitting way over there was laughing their heads off. They were laughing so hard, and I was like, I'm not even sure what they're laughing at in this point of the film, but they certainly were enjoying it. And then there's other scenes where I laughed my head off. It really had jokes in there for everybody. It really did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it definitely did for sure. Because I remember when we were talking to him just kind of about the franchise, where it was like, I think the other thing too that was a little like, just tricky at the time with the length of the franchise also had to do with the time that like, man, when the whole parody movie thing really hit. I mean, it hit in every aspect because you had like, you had, of course, scary movie, but then you had like superhero movie, you had date movie, you had like not another teen movie, you had all this huge explosion of movies that were collaborative efforts of like parodying other various movies. And I think that's one of the things that kind of was a little bit tricky, where not only with whatever happened when it came to the Wayans brothers involvement for the length of the scary movie franchise, I think was also the tricky thing as well too, because it was one of those things where like it had kind of cooled, like it had kind of fizzled out a little bit on just the parody thing, where maybe people were a little burnt, maybe they weren't quite laughing like they were, or maybe just their attentions had simply gone to a different direction. But that was the thing I really loved about bringing back, Scary Movie. That was a lot of fun. Because again, they had said, they're like, look, we're looking to put in our humor, the stuff that people are familiar with. If we offend you, then we did our job correctly. And we also have interest in doing follow-ups to other movies that we've done, and we would love Scary Movie Six's potential success to be a gateway to that.
Yeah.
So we're definitely stoked about that for sure. So
Yeah.
we're definitely happy, and we had a great time at the movie, man. Like we genuinely enjoyed ourselves, and again, we we are fans, just of your work in general. I mean, your roles in these movies that Devil and I can definitely relate to, whether it be attachments to previous movies like A Doctor Sleep or a completely new story to be told, like how Haunting of Hill House went. You've definitely given me and Devil so much to enjoy, and we're super duper stoked for everything that you're giving us in the future, Fedor.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, like I said, that NDA film is going to be really something. I think it's going to be a big deal for me personally, and I think people are really going to like it. The way it's shaping up, I think people are really going to like it. I'm looking forward to sharing that with everybody.
Devil and I
Okay.
can't wait to get our NDA tickets, man. We're all about it.
Yeah. NDA, the sequel, 47. It's like Back to the Future, Jaws 70.
Of course. And
NDA 70.
oh, absolutely. And Fedor, of course, you've been so gracious with your time this evening, and we definitely want to honor your time as well. But of course, before Devil and I let you go officially, please, as a follow-up to what we had talked about with you talking about Cross, just anything that you would like to let your fans as well as our Fangs and Infernos know about what they have to look forward to. We definitely want to give you the moment to speak to your fans directly.
Well, thank you very much. No, I mean, Cross is a big one for me. This other NDA film is a big one for me. So I certainly hope that your fans will follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It's just my name, Fedor Stier. And as those things come out, I can share behind the scenes stories, photos. I'm making it a point of taking a lot of pictures behind the scenes now, even though we're not supposed to bring cameras to set. I do and sneak those pictures in. And there's some pretty cool stuff that happens behind the scenes that I'm excited to share with you. In fact, no, I can't tell you that either. But there's some cool stuff coming for sure.
Absolutely.
And once it comes out, call me up, let me know, and I'll come back on and tell you more about it.
Oh,
Sounds
yeah.
great. Absolutely. And as a fun, like final question for you, Fedor, do you have a favorite horror movie?
Yeah. I was just recently asked this. Actually, it was at the Maryland con. Shaun of the Dead.
Nice.
Shaun of the Dead really, really tickled my funny bone. I mean, it hit me at the right place at the right time, and I laughed so hard in that film. And I got to say that comedy horror
Hmm.
subgenre of horror is really appealing to me. And man, I would love to do more of that because horror, pure horror for me, maybe some of your fans don't want me to admit this, but it's not something that I naturally will sit down and watch a pure horror film. But
Sure.
add that comedic element to it,
Mhm.
I love it. It is so much fun because something about the juxtaposition of the truly terrifying,
Yeah.
disgusting, and horrible things that humans can do, or creatures, or aliens, or whatever you have, interwoven with ridiculous humor
Hmm.
that it makes somehow make the humor becomes even funnier because it's such a
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, especially something like Shaun of the. I think like when it comes to those like horror comedies, there have been a bunch out there, but to me, I think the mega top ones of that is the Shaun of the Dead and like the Duck Tucker and Dale. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Just
yes.
because the absurdity of the craziness. These people are killing themselves. It's like, why are you jumping in the wood chipper? And just like the absurdity of like they're
Yeah.
out and this girl's eating this guy and she's like or like they're throwing records at a person or something, at the zombie, or to the point where like he's just so oblivious, he's just walking around to go get his cornetto, and everything around him is like chaos and he's not even
Yeah.
paying. It's just like the absurdity, just the little small things that are in that film. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like Vampire, he'll say he wasn't on board with the comedy horrors, and especially
Not
with
right away.
Shaun of the Dead. I was a Shaun of the Dead guy from day one, mainly because I was a huge fan of Nick Frost and Edgar Wright and all that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
loved Spaced. I loved the show Spaced that they were on. So I was already fans of their work before Shaun of the Dead came out. So as soon
Yeah.
as I saw that was coming out, I'm like, dude, those guys plus zombie comedy. I'm like,
It's going to
that's
be
a
good.
winning. That I mean, that one right there. I mean, you talked about before when you asked Bob about movies that you're going to get big. I don't care what anybody said.
they probably won't admit to it, but they know when they were making that movie that that was gonna. There's no way you couldn't have not made that movie, not realizing that it was gonna blow up like it did.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And Tucker and Dale, you're right. I'd forgotten about that one, but I laughed my head off on that one too. Again, the
Yeah,
absurdity, that juxtaposition of horror and comedy,
yeah,
just
exactly.
makes it even funnier somehow.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it
I
makes
was I
that
was
like that
just
chaos makes it more like, oh my God, it's so when you get these elements of scary and then an element of laugh, it changes your endorphins, you know what I mean? It pushes you all over the place where you're like, oh my God, and you're like, ah, and then you're like, and then I like it, yeah, especially with stuff like with Scary Movie where it's like, you know, I've been a huge Wayans fan my whole entire life. I love all their stuff. I was a huge, In
Yeah.
Living Color fan. I love all their stuff. They've always been that level of should we say it or shouldn't we say it comedy, and I
Yeah.
love that they still, even in a world today where that kind of comedy is sort of frowned on nowadays, with cancel culture, that they were willing to still
Take that
do
risk.
what the Wayans do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love those movies. Same way I love those other ones I mentioned because for the same reason, that mix of comedy and horror, absolutely hysterical.
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I was delicate back in the day, back when I started. Like there were horror comedies that I was way into, like being fans of like Trauma, something like The Toxic Avenger. I was a super nerd for that. Things that Full Moon has put out that's incredibly absurd. But I was like really kind of delicate in the turn of the 2000s when I had this hard time, where I felt disconnected, where I couldn't necessarily differentiate between a parody horror comedy because of somebody that was like paying like a tribute or being a fan of versus somebody who I felt might be making fun of something I really like. And as our Night of the Living Dead fan and as like a Return of the Living Dead fan, so, I was a little like sensitive back then when I was like, oh, stop making fun of something that's so great, even though the late George Romero had signed off on it. But then when I actually gave it a second and watched, I mean, I was in it to win it, and it was definitely an absolutely awesome movie. So we definitely love our Shaun of the Dead when it comes to here. But of course, Fedor, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving us some time this evening. And again, the thing that's most important to myself and Devil is that you enjoyed your time this evening. You felt respected. You liked the questions. And then, you felt in any way, shape, or form, our conversation can benefit your continued success.
Thank you guys. No, I had an absolute blast talking to you guys and sharing stories and discussing our philosophies about horror comedies. So it's been great. Thank you so much.
We look forward to having you back on when those NDA movies come out into theaters so we can talk about them and have some more fun, Fedor. So it's been an absolute pleasure.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Of course. Fangs and Infernos, thank you guys so much. Please make sure that you're following Fedor Steer on all of his socials so you know everything that's coming out with Crossed, as well as the upcoming films and projects that he's involved in that we're unable to discuss on this particular episode, but we'll be able to discuss on a future episode. So, of course, Devil and I also want to take a moment to simply shout out our beloved, partners and sponsors of the Vampire and Devil podcast and Rock and Horror. They are our merch store. Please go to rockandhorror.com, support Mark and Lizzie with everything that they do. The Vampire and Devil collab category is where you have all of the V&D merch for our show, so definitely check them out. Of course, our buddy John, who owns the Salem Witchboard Museum, the Witchboard Museum of Baltimore, Chris and Saren, who own Twisted Vines Horror Decor. Of course, our beloved also friend Chris, who has turned the Buffalo Bill House from Silence and the Lambs into an amazing Airbnb. And of course, shout out to our friends at Brutalities for everything that they've got going on. So please make sure that you're supporting all those independent businesses and all those independent museums and locations to keep them thriving as well. And again, on behalf of myself, Devil, follow us on the Vampire and Devil podcast on YouTube. Follow, like, subscribe, and share. And then, of course, you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram for all of our announcements as well. But that is enough for us. On behalf of myself, on behalf of our beloved Devil, more importantly than that, he is Fedor Steer, and we really appreciate his time this evening. We'll see you guys real soon. Take care, and we look forward to the next conversations. Horns up, fangs out.